In 3, Steve, the environment. What will you do to promote the cleanup of the identified toxic sites in our South Hill neighborhoods? And in particular, what are your suggestions for moving DEC to act on what's already been identified? And we're going to begin with Wade, please.
Well, just a few days ago, TCE was upgraded, which is kind of a strange term in the context, to known carcinogen as opposed to suspected. And so that's sad news, but at the same time gives more power and impetus to the cleanup that needs to happen. And I think it needs to happen very aggressively right on the Emerson property. And at the same time, it makes it clear to us that we need indoor air quality testing in your neighborhood. I mean, when that came before the Board of Public Works, with the proposed remediation, with the passive vent, or the vacuum vent rather, wind-driven, it sounded nice that it would only work on windy days, but at the same time, we wanted to allow updrafts up the hill. And so at the board, we decided not to recommend that easement, and of course, Common Council did the right thing in not granting it either. So there's that lever, and there's also the reclassification of TCE. We have to get aggressive with the DEC. I've worked with them on other situations and projects, most recently at the wastewater plant. We're doing a coal tar cleanup. Of course, that's not a residential neighborhood. What? Some questions seem to take forever to answer. So, and I'm going to take this opportunity to say that I appreciate you having these questions, and this is the format that's needed, and this is a campaign for mayor. I'd feel much better talking with you than at you, but I'll proceed, of course. At any rate, the city has to be ready to take some legal action if need be. This is a matter of people's lives. It always has been, but it's more open now. And so we're going to have to do something about it. And otherwise, economically, the Emerson property means a great deal to the city and the entire community. We've got some plans that we'd like to carry out there, and now my time is up. But talk to me, please.
Yes, yes.
So environment, there's a lot to talk about here. There's the obvious issues of pushing to receive regulations for indoor ambient air testing. Because if you're in your home with your windows open, we've come to learn at this point that that air affects you, and there is a danger there. So we do need to be aggressive with the DEC on that. We also need to be aggressive in continuing to test the effectiveness of the depressurization systems, and forgive me if I've got that term wrong, that have been installed. From what I understand, we currently have about 50 homes that are fitted with these depressurization systems, but yet there's no ongoing testing towards the effectiveness of these depressurization systems. And from speaking with people like Walter Hang, it seems like a pointless measure. And I think that if we're going to implement measures, we need to demand that there is continued testing to ensure that the measures we're taking are effective. Otherwise, there's money, time, and our health at tremendous risk, which is unacceptable. So I think that we need to be aggressively working towards standardized levels of testing in both the air quality as well as the systems that we're putting in place there. And I think we need to take a firm stance that this needs to happen soon. We need to come with plans when we go before Common Council, because now at this point, far too much time has passed without anything taking place, without anything moving forward. And as Wade mentioned, the Emerson site is a tremendous site. It's a 17-acre building on 100 acres of land. It's a massive piece of property that could be a tremendous investment for the city, could return tremendous amounts of revenue to the city. We need to have it cleaned up, and there's different levels that it can be cleaned up to. It can be cleaned up to residential grade, for housing, industrial grade, for a power facility, for instance, or commercial grade. Now, this is going to make a large difference on just how clean the hill is. It also makes a tremendous difference on the cost of cleaning up the hill. But I think that we as a city need to come together and figure out what that site is best used for and work aggressively towards that implementation.
This is an issue that really faces South Hill residents. We have source point contamination on 2 locations in South Hill, Emerson and Thurm. We also have this contamination traveling under the ground through our properties, through our homes, through our city streets, migrating down to our watershed, down to 6 Mile Creek. That's how far we've seen it travel. We as a city need to take a vested interest in eliminating the contamination in our city. We have to be proactive and not reactive. To this point, the city has taken a very passive role, mainly in just observing what is going on and disseminating information in the hopes that the community will stand up and organize to act on its own behalf in the face of large industry and the DEC. And we have been left as a community to accept what they have deemed is acceptable for us. Basically meeting the minimum regulations acceptable nationwide rather than what is deemed appropriate by most of the states in the United States. So I believe that we as a city need to take a proactive role, putting ourselves at risk in some ways in terms of litigation, something that the city has been very reluctant to do. We have a vested interest in cleaning up our community. The downhill area of Emerson will never move forward as a neighborhood until we clean up the neighborhood. And we need to take a role and stand with our residents rather than on the side observing. Stand with our residents and say, we demand a seat at the table with the DEC and with Emerson so that we will have a voice in negotiating what is an acceptable cleanup. And that acceptable cleanup should be nothing less than a cleanup that is in strict compliance with all state regulations.
Well, this is one of those issues that's kind of hard to do in 2 minutes. Because I'm really passionate about pollution. I used to work in the insurance industry before I became a code officer. And the company that I worked for basically went out of business because they had to set aside a lot for pollution. With that said, and I agree 100% with what Cynthia said, and I'm really surprised to hear you say it. Because when she was on the board of Public Works, and that's one of the things that got me into this, because I didn't see them actually being proactive in saying, hey, this is in our sewer system. Borg Warner has admitted to 60 years of polluting the lake, and they get off by spending $1.5 million. And at no time do I see where the city has actually been proactive in saying, what about the economic impact that you've done, that you've created by reducing the value of these homes in this area? What about the fact that you've polluted the lake, you've polluted our water system, polluted our sewer system, and you're not actually going towards fixing what you've done? And the city really should be involved in that. If I were on the Common Council, one of the things I'd ask for is for the city attorney to determine whether or not, after the decision has been made, which it's already been made, we can still sue to find out if there is a way to mitigate this problem. The city charter says that if you pollute the water system, that you should be able to, that we can actually be active towards getting some remediation, some money from the person who's done the pollution. And I think that the city really should be involved in that. I mean, we don't know how much of an impact it's had on the south end of the lake. From what I've read, okay. As I said, I can't finish it in 2 minutes.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at some of the faces in this room, and I don't have to tell you guys what's at stake. And I don't have to tell any of you what's already been done. You know, I followed and I've watched with admiration the work that you've put in. So the question is, how will I promote the cleanup? Specifically, how will we get the DEC to act? You guys would feel like the DEC is not listening? You know. The hard thing, the challenge we've had is you've got the CAD doing great work. You've got Walter doing great work. We've got all this wonderful information. And how do we convince, what's our leverage point with the state? How do we get the DEC to do what we need them to do? In my opinion, you find your leverage with our state representatives. I think our best bet right now is working with Assemblywoman Barbara Lifton to pressure the DEC. Because they'll respond to an assemblywoman much differently than they'll respond to a city council person or even a mayor of a city in the state. I think our best bet is to continue the work that many of you have already been doing. Continue to work with the assemblywoman. And if we can, I don't have as good a relationship with her, but we can work with our state senator to express how important this issue is to us and to get leverage with the DEC so that we can get the cleanup that we need on South Hill. Thank you.
I'll do my best to squeeze everything in here in the 2 minutes, but because I need to address two things right quick. There was something mentioned early on in the first question about IC students having a community service component, and they do have that. I think it is more important that we make sure that they adhere to that, and that we actually, more importantly, have more involvement, probably from City Hall as well as encouraging and supporting the neighbors in doing that. And also, I just want to say the idea of having housing in zone places so that you have students here and residents here. I personally disagree with that because I think when you have sectional housing like that, you get into a ghettoized effect and you have something that I do not support, where you have communities that are neglected or run down. I think that's a bad precedent to set. I will not go there. As far as this question is concerned, I think the thing that Wade pointed out about TCE being upgraded, if you can call it that, to a known carcinogen, was actually surprising, alarming to me, I should say. And Kid and I talked about this yesterday because I'm reading this about kidney malformations and increased thymus weight and all this, and I'm like, okay, I don't know the jargon, but this looks scary. But this is stuff that those of you who live here know these things already. And I think that what we need to do to get beyond this is really take advantage of this opportunity we have now. I was really amazed to find out that this whole deal with the smokestack proposal from Emerson was the first time the city had a chance to get involved. Now, I've been on council for 6 years, and we've heard this whole cleanup thing going on, but it never has it come to us in a way that we had a chance to be directly involved. And it just kind of slapped me in the face when I realized that. So at this point now, the door's been open, let's seize it. Let's seize the moment. And my approach is really to sit, set, and hold. Sit together with those of you who are most directly impacted, as well as the other neighbors. And let's figure out, with the experts, what are the expectations that we need to have and that we need to demand from both Emerson, from Borg Warner, and particularly from the state. Oh, wow, that was good. Okay, we'll sit with those people and make sure that they do that, and then we're going to hold them accountable for it every step of the way, through the city and through you, because if you don't speak up with us, then, well, things will fall off.